morning. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Thank you. Okay, today's daf. Good morning. Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Kuf Ches. In Yevmot says we learn from four Shlem for Lozer ben Ruma and for Yosef Azriel ben Chaim Michal. Welcome back, Michael. All right, we're up to the 15th line on daf Kuf Ches where we got to yesterday. As we were finishing yesterday, I realized afterwards I made a mistake when I translated in the 6th line. We're talking about how it's easy for a girl, a Ketana who only had a Kedushin Drabanan or a Nesuin Drabanan. She can walk away from the marriage just by saying, I don't want this guy, or I'm sick of this, or I want out. So he said, Yoshevas Bapirian. I translated that as a palace, not a palace. It's like the marriage litter, where they carried her to the chuppah, and she says, you know what? I don't want this guy. Even if she's on her way to the chuppah, if she says, I don't want him, that's good enough for me. That's the proper translation there. Now back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said, any young girl that if she can't even guard her wedding ring or the shtar kedushin, if she doesn't even know what she's doing, she doesn't even need miyum. Like him. Tana, let's say she didn't actually say I refuse, I want out, I want to leave this marriage. But what she did it, she implied it. How? And she got married to somebody else. She's married to this guy with the kedushin rabbana, and she got married to somebody else. Well, that's a demonstration that she doesn't want the first guy. That effectively is miyum. By getting married to number 2, that effectively that confirms her miyuna number 1. She didn't have to say I refuse number 1. I don't want him anymore. Just marrying number 2 is good enough. Okay, that's if she marries number 2. What happens if she only had kedushin? She only was engaged to number 2. Is that also accomplished or not? Toshma Tana Shlomiyana. Tana who she didn't actually yet refuse it explicitly. She got married. She had a kedushin to number 2. Kedushin is also just getting engaged to number 2 means that she's rejecting number 1. Is there a machlokus about that? Did they argue? Maybe that's Rabbi Yudam say, or maybe the rabbis say no, that she has to actually say I refuse. If they argue by kedushin, so they only argue by kedushin. Kedushin isn't really the final step of marriage, so maybe they say kedushin, that just having kedushin to number 2 does not reject number 1. Or afilu binisuin, or maybe they argue even if she got married to number 2, that also is not a rejection of number 1. Would the rabbi say and if they argue afilu binisuin, even if they argue there, is the halacha like him or not? Halacha kamoso, ain't halacha kamoso. If you say halacha is like Rabbi Yudam Meseira, that getting married to number 2 is a rejection of number 1, been a suin or kedushin, or only by if she actually got married to number 2, or even if she just had kedushin. Tashma, I remember Rashi says it means lach is like in both cases, whether she had kedushin or nesuin to number 2, even kedushin, and certainly nesuin, that is a rejection of number 1. Halacha machlal the plig. It's mashma that they do argue. So the halacha is like him. Okay, this we're saying that getting married to number 2, and we pass it like Rabbi Meseira, is a rejection of number 1. What was her condition with number 1? Was she fully married to number 1? Again, a kedushin drabanan, because she's a ketana married by her brother or mother. Was she fully married to him, or maybe only if there was kedushin? But if she was fully married to him, maybe marrying number 2 does not constitute a rejection. Tashma. So you have a proof from here.
How could she marry? How could she marry number 2? Isn't that an eshet ish?
So that's exactly right. So if she would have a kedushin menat Torah, you're right. That would be eshet ish, and it wouldn't be effective. In fact, it would be usher on punishment of kares, or if there's eidim and asra, she'd be killed for it. But here we're speaking, it's only kedushin drabanan, and a kedushin drabanan she can walk away from. She's a ketana. She's 8-9 years old. Her mother married her off. It's only kedushin drabanan to keep her off the streets, as we said. And the rabbi said also she can reject it by walking away and saying, I don't want this guy. So now we're saying, you know what? Marrying number 2 is effectively saying, I don't want this guy. That's good enough. So here we have a proof. Now we're looking for a proof. Was she fully married to number 1? Again, kedushin drabanan or not? Tashma nekalsi ve'ibdan. Abdan, we had him before, right? And we had this fellow before, Talmud of Rebbe. His daughter-in-law, Imra, she rebelled. She says, I don't want him. I don't want him. She was a ketana. Shudder Rebbe. So Rebbe said, Zudu Rabban, a pair of rabbis, and to check to see if she's really she stands by her rebellion or not. Amilu, they told Amilu Nashi Chazig of Reichet Gassu. So some women said to them, "Oh, look, here's your husband's your husband is coming along." Amilu, Nahavi Gavachil, let him be your husband. In other words, they said, let him be your husbands. We don't want him. Maybe Amri Lahu, maybe there were several people involved. There were several Ketanos who rejected it. It's not clear. They said, like, let him be your husbands. By saying, listen, you keep him. Now, when women say that today, my husband, you can have him. That's not good enough because that's the Kedushin Ta'arai. So you need a get for that, either a get or the other way to get out of a marriage, of course, is for the husband to die. One of those two. But for a Kedushin Drabanan, which we don't really have that today, it's not done. Kedushin Drabanan just saying, I don't want the guy is good enough. My lavdam nesiba, doesn't it mean where if she was even married to number one, a Kedushin Drabanan, says, lo, davim mikitche Kedushin, maybe it was just Kedushin. Maybe it was a Kedushin. So you can't prove from over there. We're trying to say, yes, the halacha is like Rabbi Seira, that just saying marrying number two is effectively rejecting number one. But is it only if she was only engaged to number one, a Kedushin Rabbanan, or even if she was married with a Kedushin Rabbanan to number one? So we can't prove it from there. But the halacha Rabbi Meir feel nasu in the comment. The halacha is like Rabbi Meir that reject marrying number two is a rejection of number one, even if she only had Kedushin with number two, and even if she was fully married to number one, again, a Kedushin Rabbanan. Rabbi Lezer Omer. So our Gemara reads it as Rabbi Lezer, but in the Mishnah we read it as Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer is Rabbi Lezer ben Hurkanus. So that's how we read it in the Mishnah. Rabbi Lezer, what did he say? He said that, in other words, she's married to the guy, but it doesn't really mean much. It's just like to keep her off the streets, but she's not really married to him in the sense that if she's a Bas Yisrael, she can't eat Truma. If she's a Bas Kohen, she can still eat the Truma in her father's house. She's not really married to the guy. That's what the what Rabbi Lezer is saying. Okay. So I surveyed all the rabbis' opinions, and I haven't found any rabbi who is as consistent in his views as Rabbi Lezer. What is the status of this young girl according to Rabbi Lezer? She's walking around with him, she's being metayo with him, and she's living with him. And she gets up from his bosom, meaning after she slept with him, she goes to the mikvah after every day. She can eat truma at night, meaning even a Bas Kohen, she's a Bas Kohen, and she's married to the Yisrael, and she's living with him, she's sleeping with him, and she gets up from him, goes to the mikvah.
הרבה אנשים יש להם קורונה עכשיו. הם לא באים, אבל יש להם קורונה, קיבלו.
All right. So, Vochelis Betruma, I think Naftali's in shul. That's what I'm guessing over here. He's talking to the people there in the shul. Vochelis Betruma, and she eats Truma l'Erev. She can eat Truma. In other words, he says the marriage is just a joke. It's just to keep her off the street. It's not really a marriage. She's living with him, but she can eat Truma. She's still like if she's a Bas Kohen, she can eat Truma in her father's house. So therefore, he's very consistent that she's not really married to him, except you need a miyam. Tainu Rabbi Lezer Omer. That's what we see in the Brisa. What she does is nothing. Again, it's not a real marriage. He's not entitled to things that she finds in the street, to her things that she finds in her life. So that not entitled to her paycheck. So he can't break her in the Durham. Let's say she's 11, where we under 11 usually we don't count that for the Durham anyway. But when she's what we call onos varm at 11 years old, you check her in the Durham. He can't break her in like a regular husband could do to his wife. And Yarsha, he doesn't inherit her if she dies. He's a Kohen, he can't go to her funeral. She's not really his wife. That's Rabbi Lezer's opinion. And that's what we say of Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel said, that he's very consistent. She's not really married to the guy. It's just keeping her off the street, and she has to have a miyam. Rabbi Yeshua says no. Bala Zakim says he's entitled like a regular marriage. Again, it's only marriage Rabbanan, but he's entitled to her findings. Or might then her paycheck. He can break in a darm. The Yarsha, and he inherits her. Umetamila. And he can go to if he's a Kohen, he can go to her funeral. We had this Gemara before. Rashi mentions it over here. How can he tell me if Midaraisa, she's not his wife, and he's a Kohen? He's only allowed to tell to his 7 next of kin. It's not real time. So the Gemara over there says that since he yarshins her, right, so her own family won't tend to her, and therefore, what is she? A mace mitzvah, and that's why he can go. That's why he can go to the. That's why he can go to her funeral. Kol shel davar, says Rabbi Yeshua, harei kish l'chol davar. She's his wife in all respects. El she also makes up. He goes with me. Rabbi Nir and Divrei Rabbi Lezer. I agree with Rabbi Lezer more than Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Lezer we saw in the Mishnah, but it's expanded here in the Brisa, and we have Rabbi Yeshua's opinion here too. Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Lezer was consistent. He said she's not really married to him at all. He's not entitled to anything. She's not entitled to any benefits he's not entitled to any benefits that a normal husband would have, and he doesn't. If he's a Kohen, he's not doesn't go to her funeral, etc. They're not really husband and wife, except you need me. So he was very consistent. When it comes to this halacha of getting married, Rabbi Shua, chalak, he made a difference between them. My chalak. What do you mean chalak? He made a difference. He says, listen, according to Rabbi Shua, that it's his wife in all respect, he can break her nedarim and he's entitled to yarshin her, etc. Is it ishto to boy get need to get? According to Rabbi Yeshua's opinion that she's his wife in all these respects, you should need to get out of the marriage. So Rabbi Nami. Why don't you say the same thing? Contra Blezer says that he's not his wife in all these respects. Ilavishtu and Mia Nami, like the way you shouldn't need Mia. Says Elabachdi Tapix. The Gemara says what? She should go out with nothing. I mean, it's not just a joke. It's not a total joke. The rabbi said, take her, keep her off the streets, and be annoyed with her like a wife. But all the halachas of husband and wife don't apply, except so if she leaves, she can make mean. She makes some formal thing, even if the formality is, I don't like the guy. I get married to somebody else, anything, but you need something to say. You just don't stop the marriage with nothing. So he seems to say Rabbi Lezer is more consistent with Yeshua, according to Yeshua, that she's mamish like his wife in all respects, except you should even need to get. That's his opinion. That was Rabbi's opinion. So then the Mishnah said that if the akava has been an issue, if the reason she's not getting married to somebody else is because of, or any like holding back, is because of the man, then it's like his wife and she needs mian. If that akava is not because of the man, then it's not, she's not married to him, and you don't need mian, or that basically is the mian. What do we mean by that? So we have first opinion is that he's explaining really the way the Mishnah reads. Let's say somebody else, she's married to this guy, right? She's a Ketana married with Yushin Rabban, and she's 8 years old. And somebody else says, would you like to marry me? Another guy comes in. She said, Machmas Ploni Bali, I can't marry you. I'm married to this guy. Okay, so that's a holding back. That's a refrain. She's refraining from marrying number two because she's married to number one. In that case, she would need mian because she still shows herself as being connected to number one, right? Machmas b'nei Adam. Let's say somebody proposes a shidduch to her and she says, I don't like that guy. He's disgusting. I don't want him, or he didn't learn in the right yeshiva or whatever it was. So machmas b'nei Adam she'ena muganimli, that are not proper for me. I don't feel fit. Zuya kavah she'en minish. That's not. So she's not saying I'm not marrying number two because I'm married to number one. She's saying I'm not marrying number two because I don't like him or he's not fit for me. So that effectively means that she already rejected number one. Then you don't even need me because she doesn't consider herself married to number one at all. That's one way to learn. Abai B'Ravan and Chinim B'Ravan say that there's a total different meaning over here by these words. It means like this. They say, and this is really connected with the next Mishnah we're going to see in a minute, that he's really explaining the next Mishnah. This is what he means. Let's say he gives her a get. Now, of course, normal marriage, you need to get out of the marriage, right? But here we're talking about whether she's 8 years old, 9 years old. She can guard the get. She knows she's enough of a marriage. She can guard a kedushin. Here we go. If he gives her a get, then all the rules of divorce apply here. Meaning, get. In other words, if he is the cause of the breakup of the marriage, that's what he means akava. If he's the one breaking it up, meaning he gives her a get, and he can't marry her relatives. He can't marry your wife's sister, let's say, or her mother, your former wife. He has to because she can't marry his relatives. Well, pasam and akuna. She got a get now. She can't marry Cohen, even though she's only 8 years old, but she got a get. She can't marry Cohen. But let's say she walked away from the marriage, miyanabo, which she's entitled to do when it's a marriage rabban, and she's 8 years old. Miyanabo, zuyakav sheimish, it's not for him, and therefore it annuls the marriage. It annuls it. It breaks it up. Milamafreya, that can never took place. And therefore, so he can marry her relatives. She can marry his relatives. Says come on. That's the next Mishnah. What are you telling me? The Blazer Minyak was saying, if it's the man causing the breakup of the marriage, then it's like they were married, and he can't marry her relatives, and she can't marry his. If she broke up the marriage with Miyun, then it's like the whole thing was annulled, and therefore it never applies, and she can marry a Kohen now. She's not divorced. The whole thing was annulled. That's the next Mishnah. If he gave her a get, he's just explaining the next Mishnah. He's saying, what's the reason for the next Mishnah? What's the reason why we're going to say it? And this is the next words in the Mishnah. Look at the Mishnah. If she gives Miyun, the whole thing is annulled, never took place. Therefore, he can marry her relative and she can marry his. And she's not pasum kohen. She's not a grusha. She's not a grusha. She's not a chol. She's not a zona. It was just a marriage drabanan that was annulled. Nothing like if he gave her a get though. Who wants to recover sev? He has to recover who pasum and a kuna. Okay, so what I'm saying is that Rabbi Mack was explaining the reason for the Mishnah, because if the cause of the breakup of the marriage is the man, then it's like they were married, and the subsequent relations are forbidden. If it was a null because of her, then it doesn't apply. Now we come back to the concept of Master Grushasa Mishanissus. What does that mean? If Reuben divorces his wife and she marries Yankel, and Yankel now dies or divorces her, he's not allowed to take her back. That's the general rule of Master Grushasa Mishanissus, and just in Israel. What about when there was Mian? So now the Gemara says we're 2 lines from the bottom of the page in the Mishnah. Nothing like get. Let's say Reuben, her first husband, gave her a get, and we're talking about when she's still 8 years old. And he took her back. He's not a Kohen. If he's a Kohen, he couldn't take her back, but he's not a Kohen. Mianabo, and now she made Mian after he took her back. He first convinced her to come back to the marriage. Now she walked away. Mianabo, but this is La'achar, and she got married to Yankel, a second guy. And she was widowed or divorced from him. She can go back to him. Isn't it Master Gushasa Mishanissus? Well, we're saying over here is that the Mian that she did subsequent, she was married to the first guy twice, the Reuben twice, right? First one ended in a divorce. She was still 8 years old. And the second one ended in Mian. The Mian nullifies the get. And therefore, it's not Master Grushaso Mishanissus. It's not considered Grushaso, even though the first guy actually gave her a get the first time they were married, but the second time she walked away. So the Mian cancels the get. And therefore, even if she married number 2 and was widowed or divorced from number 2, she can go back to number 1. Let's say it was the other way around, though. Let's say with number 1, first she walked away from the marriage, then he took her back, and then he divorced her. Last line, Mian abo b'chzira, nasan a get, then he gave her a get. Then this is lach, and she got married to Nasam Skarsha, and she was widowed or divorced from the second. Asur lachsabo. She can't go back. In other words, how did she end the marriage with number 1? Did she the second time they were married? Was it end? If it ended with Mian, he can take her back because it's not Master Grushaso. The Mian cancels the gerushin, but if it ended with gerushin, here's the klal, says the Mishnah at the top of the page, and I'm in Bezak. I'll get achar Mian asur lachsabo. If the get took place after the Mian, she can't go back. Mian achar get mutaris lachsabo. That's how we learn in the Mishnah. In other words, saying that Mian cancels the get. Now, the next Mishnah or next line we're going to talk about, it's like a separate Mishnah, tells us a slightly different story. Let's say she walked away from a man, right? She was married. There were several people over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 different men, not related. She had Mian, she's 8 years old. She made Mian on number 1, Venice Lacher, and she got married to number 2. He divorced her. La'achar, she married number 3, Umianambo. She made Mian on number 3. La'achar Begirsha. Then to number 4, she married and he divorced her. Okay, so we have Mian, divorce, etc. What happens now? Who can take her back? If she left the marriage with a get, so she can't go back to him because she married somebody else in between. The Mian matachsba, if she walked away from the one with a Mian, then she can go back because Master Shasam is only a get. Okay, that sounds okay. But do these different parts of the mission, the first part of the mission, do they jibe or not? That's what we're going to discuss now. Alma Asimian forget. In the first part of the mission, we said that that if she was married to number 1 twice, the first time ended with a divorce, and the second time with a Mian, the Mian is mabatal to get. For a minute, in the second part of the mission, we don't see that. If she was married to number 1, in the second part of the mission, we said she was married number 1, ended with Mian. Married number 2, ended with get. Married number 3, ended with Mian. Why doesn't the Mian of number 3 cancel the get? We said over here, if she left the marriage from number 2 with a get, she can't go back to number 2. Why not? There was a Mian from number 3 and a Mian from number 5 and a Mian from number 7. Why can't those Mians cancel the get? The first part of Alma Asi Mian, first part of the mission, we say that Mian cancels the get. It nullifies the get. For a minute, this is la'achar begirsha la'achar Mian bo la'achar begirsha. Zakol kosher tzimena beget asur lachsbo. If she left that marriage from this guy with a get, she can't take him back after she was married to somebody else. The Mian mutaris lachsbo. If she have a Mian, could go back. Alma lo asi Mian the chavei ubatel get today. The Mian of number 3 is not mevatel the get of number 2. The Mian of number 5 is not mevatel the get of number 4. So you see, it doesn't work. So is the Mian mevatel the get? Now, first one, the Mishnah says that the Mian is mevatel the get, and therefore she can go back to him. The second part of the Mishnah says no, Mian of somebody else is not mevatel his get. Tavra means it's broken. Ein Hanami. It's the two things are shver. We have two parts of the Mishnah. First part of the Mishnah goes like one idea that mian is mavatal to get. The second part of the Mishnah says no, mian is not mavatal to get. Amar Rabba, so Rabba says, "Umaykash kasha from the ratio of Sefer Dilma mian didei mavatal get didei." In the first part of the Mishnah, we're talking about where number one was married to her twice. The first time with a get, ended with a get. The second time with a mian. So his own mian is mavatal his own get. Mian the chavreilam mavatal get David. The second part of the Mishnah was where she was married to number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and every time we said the odd ones gave her mian, the even ones gave her get. There, okay, there. Your mian cannot be mavatal my get. Maybe that's the difference over here, right?
Fine. What happens if
Yeah.
after she leaves number 1, she goes to number 2, and she has bia with number 2? Can she still go back to number 1?
Yes, we're on all these cases. We're talking where there was bia, where there was bia. There was a marriage. She married the guy. She certainly consummated with all the guys, but she's still a katana. And as a katana, she can walk away from the marriage. There's no marriage here in Torah. In all these cases that we talk about that. So she's this own marriage. Let's say she had a child with number 2. So she had a child with number 2. She walked away from number 1. She can have a child with number 2. We said on Amar Aleph that even if she just gets married to number 2, that's a rejection of number 1. So children she had from number 2 would not be mamzerim, even if she never formally said, I reject number 1. We said it's enough. We pass in Glurim Seira. She just marries number 2. That's a rejection of number 1. That's good enough. There's no mamzeris over here. So here Rabbah says, what's the difference? Why is it a kashim ratio seifa? His own mian cancels his own get. Mian the chavrei is not vatal get. So Maishna, what's the difference? Maishna mian the chavrei don't vatal get today. Why do you say that the mian of number 3, let's say, is not vatal the get of number 2? Why? Because I did Makaris from Rosim Justice. Why? Because what happened over here? This is what happened. The guy who we're afraid that since she knows the guy, she was married to these guys 1 and 2 and 3. Since she knows them. So she knows the way he hints and his gestures and stuff like that. Azul Masham, he'll go and entice her, umaisi, and bring her back. In other words, we're saying this. Why do you say that the mian of number 3, let's say, does not cancel the get of number 2? Because we're afraid. She was married to number 2, he divorced her. Then he changed his mind. He says, you know what? Come on back. But she's married now to number 3. So he says, just do mian, walk away. You can walk away, come back to me. So we're afraid of that. So we say, because of that, okay, the mian of number 3 is not going to cancel the get of number 2, and number 2 can't take her back. So mian didei nami lo levatel get. So his own. What's the difference if it's somebody else's mian or his mian? Umaisla, and bring her back. Mian didei al nami lo levatel get. His own mian, the mian, in other words, when number 1 in the first part of the Mishnah was married to her first time, and he divorced her, and then he married her a second time to give it. Mian didei nami lo levatel. She's also not valid to get today. Since she recognizes his hints and his gestures, he'll entice her to come back on Maisila. It didn't help because what happened in the case of number 1, he was married to her, gave her a get. Okay, then he took her back, and then she walked away. So she knows him already, right? And she still walked away. In the cases of number 2, in the second part of the Mishnah, where she was married 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we're saying, you know what? You know why the mian of number 3 doesn't cancel the get of number 2, or the mian of number 5 doesn't cancel all the previous ones? Why? Because we're afraid that number 2 is going to try to convince her. She knows. Come on back to me. Come on back to me. I'm sorry that I divorced you. Come on back to me. And he's going to encourage her to make mian a number 3, or number 4 will encourage her to make mian a number 5. So that's different over there because he wants a second chance. Over here, he had a second chance in the first part of the Mishnah, and she still walked away. So therefore, it doesn't mean as much. Ella. So therefore, you could say that there's a difference between the first part of the Mishnah, the second part of the Mishnah. In the first part of the Mishnah, we say what? He says, Rav says, why kush it? Me and the day, get the day. Me and the chavel get the day. Why? But here it's different because we don't. In the second part of the Mishnah, we don't want the mian to mevatel to get because it's somebody else's mian. So we're afraid that the previous guy will encourage her to make mian from the following guy. But in the first part of the Mishnah, the reason the mian cancels it because it's the same guy. So you don't have to worry about that. So maybe there is a difference between the first part of the Mishnah and the second part in Sfar. And it's not a machlokas like Rabbi Shmuel said. Rabbi says no. There's news in the Reish and Seifa. The Reish is mashma. The Reish we talk about the same guy. The same guy. Mian to the same guy is mavatal the get of the same guy. But mian of somebody else in the second part of the Mishnah is not mavatal the get. So the Gemara says, Eli kasha, the chavrei kasha. But I'll show you, here's the kasha. On one person, in other words, the second part of the mission, which talks about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all different guys. First guy gave her a mian, second guy get, and so on. Mian, get, mian, get, mian, get. I'll show you a steer there too. Why? Look, Eli Kasha the Chavre. In other words, not him to himself. The same guy. We understand why his mian cancels his get, and his get doesn't cancel his mian. But when it's talking about a different person, I'll show you a steer in that too. Why? Here's the kasha. The first part of the mission said, "Mianabo bechzirabo nasla get mislachem and asamaskarsha asur lachzirabo." What did he say in the Mishnah? If number one was married to her and she walked away, and then he took her back and he gave her a get, and she married somebody else, and the second guy was widowed or divorced, right? She was widowed or divorced from the second guy. She can't go back to the first guy, right? Because the first guy gave her a get. That was the last thing that he gave her. And she walked, and the second guy was married to her, and he widowed or divorced. She can't go back to the first guy. Why? Because the second guy died or divorced her. What happens if the second guy over there in the first part of the mission? What happens if he gave me? And it's mashma he gave me. And she can go back, even though it's a different guy. The first guy gave her a get, right? He first gave her me, and then he gave her a get. Then she married the second guy. Oh, if she widowed or divorced from the second guy, the first guy can't take her back. What happens if she was mean on the second guy? Mashma, he could take her back. Because only widowed or divorced, he can't take her back. So from the first part of the mission, it's mashma that the mian of the second guy is mabatal the get of the first guy, and the first guy can take her back for a minute. But the second part of the mission is not mashma that way. That's the second part of the mission we've just been discussing with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Amenes bish menis la'acher begirsha amenes bish menis la'acher begirsha. The second guy divorced her. Number one gave me, number two gave her divorce. La'acher mina. The number three gave her me, and so on. If she left him with a get, if number two and number four and number six gave her a get, the mian of the following of the guys who are next in line does not cancel it. So there's a steer between the reish and the seifa. Does mian given by one person cancel the get of somebody else's in order to take it back? So you see there's a steer between the reish and the seifa. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Taf Mishazazu. Actually, right, there's a machlokas here. The first part is mishmashma that mian cancels somebody else, not only your own. Mian, follow-up mian cancels the get of the first guy. Again, we're talking about an 8-year-old girl. If she had mian thing, cancels it. There's no, nullifies all the previous kitten. That's for the first part of mishmash. The second part is mashma not. Ula Amar could go and shishil shebekitten. Who says no, it's not. The reason why it doesn't work in the seifa is because shishil shebekitten the mechzik igdola. That the seifa doesn't work is because we're talking about where you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 2, 4, and 6 gave her a get. Each gave her a get. And when she had 3 gittin already, she looks like a gdola. She looks like a professional, and therefore we say that's why it doesn't work. The rabbi looks like a gdola, therefore we don't want to say that the mian cancels it. Okay, so he gives this answer. But the first answer of Rabbi Lazar was, and how is the steer between the mission and the reish and the seifa? The reish is mashma that mian, a follow-up mian, even by somebody else, cancels the get of the first guy. And the second part of the mission is not mashma; it's a machlokas. Montana, who are the machlokas and who are the balei plukta over here? So Rabbi Rav says it's like this. He explains like this: Rav is one of the balei plukta. Why? The pasuk says in Eicha, "Meimenu b'kesav shesinu." We drank our water. Our water is like Torah. Torah is a nimshal to water. We drank our water for money. Eitzeinu, our wood, the mechir yavo, came with a price, with money, meaning we had to pay for basic things for learning. What are we speaking of? B'shas sakana, when there was a dangerous time for the Jews to learn Torah, and they were jailed or imprisoned or killed for learning Torah, we wanted to know this halacha. This ketana who left, again, she left the first guy with a get. And she left the second guy with me, and that's our discussion. Can mian of the second guy cancel the get of the first guy? In the sense that if there is no get, that means that she can marry a Kohen, and there's no isur machzik b'shas mishnissas, etc. And Mishnah said, what's the halacha? She can go back to the first one. Is there a problem of machzik b'shas mishnissas? They paid 400, so it was a fantastic amount of money to ask the shaila of Rabbi Akiva, who was in prison. V'shalu es Rabbi Akiva b'Beis, and he was incarcerated in jail, as we had that before. He was in jail for an extended period of time, and they snuck him in. He took they asked the shaila, they sent the shaila, they paid the guy a lot of money to take the chance just to ask the shaila. But also, Rabbi Akiva says no, you can't take her back. As Yehuda Meseir, they asked Rabbi Yehuda Meseir, and Nitziv also he also paid it. So here, this is the opinion. Rav says this is the story that they spent a lot of money to find out that they asked this shaila, and he said that you can't take it back. In other words, mian from number 2 does not cancel the get of number 1, according to Rabbi Kiva and according to Masera. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Shmuel disagrees with Rav in the story. He says, no. We didn't need to ask this question and spend all that money for that. Why? Because if mian takes away a marriage, right? Moshe asked before, did she have bia with them? Of course she had bia with all of them. But mian takes away the marriage. If it takes away a marriage, which is or kares, right? Mian just walks away. She marries number 2. She never had a get from number 1. Isn't there a mamzer? No. It takes away the whole marriage, which is an Isser Kares. It's as if she married somebody. If Isser Kares title, Isser Lav Lakolshka, and certainly can take away the Isser of Machzik B'Shasam Mishanissus, takes away this Lav. That's Machzik B'Shasam Mishanissus is only an Isser Lav. So certainly can take that. Ram Kachshol, this was the Shiloh that they asked to spend all the money on to ask Shiloh. Here's an interesting question. Listen to this case. Haresha Haisa Eishes Achi Imo Shi Shnialo. Here's a woman. Listen to this. This young woman, this 8-year-old woman, was the wife of her mother's brother. Listen to it carefully. Your mother's brother. Now, if it's your father's brother, your uncle, his wife is also Manator. You can never marry her. Even if your uncle died, you can never marry her, right? But if it's your mother's brother's wife, that's only an Isser Drabanan. It's what we call a Shnia. So this woman, listen to her, she's 8-9 years old. She was married to your uncle, your mother's brother. Okay. And then let's say he died. Or divorced or whatever, he's out of the picture. He died. Your uncle died. And this woman now married your brother from your father's side. You don't have the same mother as your brother. So it's not your brother's aunt. She's just an 8-year-old girl. Stam, an 8-year-old girl. She married your brother from your father's side, and he died. And he died with no children. Now this woman's falling to you to Yibam, right? Because she was married to your brother. You're married to your brother. Now, but on the one hand, you have a case of Yibam. On the other hand, there's an Isser Drabanan to marry her because she was once married to your mother's brother. So she was once your aunt, which is Isser Drabanan. So here's the question. Can you make Mia now on the husband who's already in Harazesim? In other words, your uncle who's dead, he died a year ago. You understand? And this girl who was your aunt, you're married to your mother's brother. She now married your brother. Your brother died with no children, fell Yibam. Okay, but you can't marry her because there's an Isser Rabbanan here. So we said Isser Rabbanan, give her chalitza. Yeah, but can she make you? Since she's still only 8-9 years old, can she make Mia now on her deceased first husband, not on the second husband? Make Mia on the first husband and make Yibam. Yesh Mia lachem mitzvah can do Mia after Misa, but Makkah mitzvah because here you have a mitzvah of Yibam over here, so maybe she should make Yibam over. She can make Mia on the first deceased husband, so she can make Yibam with you. Oh no, or not. So they hired the two guys for 400 zuz. They always go in pairs. And he says, no, you can't. You can't make me on a deceased man. They asked Rabbi Yehuda and Masera, and it's even also, that was the shiloh. It was a different shiloh entirely, not related to our discussion. Our discussion is, can me and of a second guy cancel the get of the first guy? Rav said, no, you can't. That was what Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Masera answered, no, you can't. Shmuel says, no, you can. That does work. The shiloh they asked him was this other complicated question. Can you make mian after the husband's dead? She was married to a second guy. Can you make mian under the first husband? Even though Rav says that you cannot, Rav learned the story that the question was about mian on the second guy canceling get of the first guy. She can marry his brother. Even though this guy can't marry anymore, it's according to Rav, and you can't take her back. Again, where the first guy, he left the first guy with a get, and the second guy with Mian, but she can marry the first guy's brother, right? Normally, if you divorce somebody, your brother can't marry her, but over here, she could marry the brother. Why not? Who knew them? What's the reason why we say that, take her back? Because he recognizes her hints and she recognizes his hints and gestures of the first guy. That's what we probably but he doesn't know the brother. I think you shouldn't marry his brother either because he might come to take him back. We don't say that. Just like she can't marry him. Again, who is him? The one who she departed from him with a get, and the second guy with Mian. And we say that she can't take the Mian doesn't cancel the first guy's get, and therefore he can't take her back. She can't marry his brothers either. She doesn't recognize it. You're not worried about a takala. The reason why we're saying you're worried about it is because maybe he'll try to entice her back because he knows his gestures, etc. And the second guy, you're not worried about that. The brother, and the second guy here, the brother does not recognize that. Where it goes with it, the brother, you shouldn't marry the brother either, because if you marry the brother, you might come to marry him also, and that's forbidden, as we just said, according to Rav. All right, we'll pick from here tomorrow, Mr. Shem. Have a good day, everybody.